to today's Talk Business and Politics Daily. I'm Roby Brock. It's Monday. We're joined by John Brummett of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Always good to be with you.
Glad you finished the conversation in time to start the interview.
Just right. I mean, you know, that's perfect. A pro right there.
It is, yeah.
Okay, let's begin with a big development Friday afternoon, late last week. Steve Bannon, the president's chief political strategist, some say they credit him with getting Trump over that finish line in the election in 2016 out at the White House. They say it was a little bit pre-planned. We all know in Trump world that stuff just happens sometimes. So what do you think are the pros and the cons for those that support Trump and don't support Trump with Bannon being on exit? Let's take pro-Trump first.
If you pro-Trump, what are the advantages?
Yeah, of having Steve Bannon on the outside.
Well, if you're pro-Trump, at this point, you're in the 35% base, basically. And that actually would seem to me by Bannon's departure to be in some measure of peril, because he's not there to represent your nationalist, populist, extreme interests, but he is back at Breitbart, which if you weren't reading before, you now know about and are more likely to read, and criticizing the Trump White House, if not Trump personally, for its seeming move to sort of conventional establishment republicanism. Seeming move. Yep. Everything about the Trump the White House must be mitigated when you describe it. So I think there ought to be some concern in that base, because you know, they had their guy on the inside. Now he's on the outside, and their side seems, by conventional scoring, to have lost a big round. The generals and the family, mainly Jared and Ivanka, and the globalist economists seem to have won.
For now.
For now.
Yeah.
What they can take heart in is you never know about Trump. And if they don't concern themselves so much with the appearances I've just described and wait for his next tweet or his next pronouncement, they may be happy.
I would argue on the flip side, too, with Bannon on the outside, he has had the insider knowledge now of knowing where a lot of bones are buried, not only from a politics perspective, but also there's no telling what he may have rooted around in for those 6 or 7 months he was in the White House, and may have walked out with a stack full of ideas.
Right. He has no, Breitbart in conventional journalism terms doesn't have much credibility. It has great influence in a certain constituency, but it just goes off on tangents and repeats a lot of things that aren't substantiated. But he brings back to it now the fact that he's been on the inside, and if even he doesn't have the skeletal remains to use, even if he does, it appears that he might. Breitbart's the big winner here, and the White House, if you're anti-Trump, to go back to your original question, you might take heart in this, in that it appears that sort of the moderate thinking, pragmatic general is having his way, and the White House is now his, and McMaster and the Globe and Cohn, the economists, they're prevailing, and Republicans in Congress are probably taking heart. Like, we got rid of the wildest guy, and now maybe we can have a conventional Republican White House. That seems to be what is being constructed. Yeah. But as we all know, you just never know. Exactly. In the famous words of Joaquin Andujar of the St. Louis Cardinals, who said those were the only 3 words of English anyone needed to know. You never know, especially with this guy.
So against the backdrop of Bannon leaving was a week's worth of terrible press for the president among independents, Democrats, traditional voters that read all kinds of dog whistles into the president's comments post-Charlottesville last week. You've written about this a couple of times. We've all talked about it a lot over the last week to 10 days.
You've made a rare editorial
I did make a rare one over the weekend. But you've got these Confederate monuments and these white supremacists, these neo-Nazis, the KKK, are out there emboldened at this point in time and planning more activity. I guess my question to you is this the next big culture war in America, or do we see this fizzle and perhaps it fades back to some of the more traditional cultural battles that we've seen, abortion and things like that?
Gosh, I don't know. That requires a prediction of the future that I'd rather avoid. But it is a new emergence and a new dynamic. It is fraught with great danger because the whole issue mobilizes everybody. And the opposing sides in a way that it just that every weekend becomes a tinderbox where we're going to have some potential demonstration and counter demonstration, because the Confederate romanticists, whether they're filled with hate or they're just misguided about what really happened in the Civil War or don't care, on one side, and then the counter who feel obliged, because motivated by fear and resentment, that's the big, to supposedly save these monuments. And when they come out in the public square, they will inevitably include the more malignant element, probably now, the neo-Nazis and white supremacists and white nationalists. And then there are those on the left who say, we can't ignore that, that's appeasement. We're obliged to actively resist that in this culture, to fight for right. So in tomorrow's column, when I say, could we please go back to just ignoring these monuments and not even knowing they're there when we walk past them, a pragmatic solution, I wonder if that's going to be possible. And it's like the worst thing to happen, because our country is so polarized and divided, and now, somehow, we are re-fighting the Civil War. That's what seems to be happening the last couple of weekends. And it's disastrous. And seriously, I mean, you say, your commentary was, let them stand, which I think is sort of a pragmatic concession. There's just too much trouble.
Well, I just don't see an Arkansas legislature taking those monuments down.
But put plaques or information there that puts a true historical perspective for them. My concern about that is, who writes the truth? Mm-hmm. And the truth is the very thing some of these relitigators of the Civil War resist, avoid, deny. So I don't, I don't
know where the consensus comes on that.
I'll be happy to
also wanted to point out the fact that this is what these statues say on them, that they are commending these people of the Confederacy when we want to use them as a teaching moment. That's not a teaching moment there, or teaching the wrong lesson.
That's an important difference, and I guess we're just lost on some people when we explain it. As I wrote in my column Sunday, I've driven through the National Military Park at Vicksburg, and these glorious large monuments that states built, sometimes in competition with each other to make them more impressive. That, to me, is educational. You drive a child through there and the child goes, wow. And you tell the child, this is what happened here, and they may want to go learn about the Civil War. A statue of Robert E. Lee glorifies Robert E. Lee, and a statue of a Confederate soldier glorifies the Confederate soldier. It's almost out of context to put some Civil War instructional information on something that is a personal glorification of the general. And by the way, while I'm on it, let me just say, most of these monuments in the South were erected from 1890 to 1930. In the beginning, largely because Confederate widows prevailed on their communities to honor their then dying husbands who began to die in the 1890s. But by the 1930s, these were the Jim Crow, KKK night riders lynching people who were sitting on the city councils by day putting these things up. Mm-hmm. Does no good to say that to some people, but that also would have to be part of the bitter truth.
They were there for intimidation.
They were there for intimidation. They were also there in defiance. Mm-hmm. Look here. Yeah. You say we lost. We didn't lose. Look, this Stonewall Jackson monument in Richmond, which will be the next big battle apparently, and whose grandsons have written an essay saying, take it, great grandsons, take it down. it looks defiantly to the north for the purpose of saying we're still fighting. And it's just unbelievable that we're spending this much time, and I'm spending too much time right now, talking about this issue. It is not, it is the opposite of evolution. It's retrogression of our society.
Well, it's obsolete, and it would have not been allowed to have put a statue of a big middle finger up in the middle of some of these town squares.
But that's what it is. That's essentially what it is.
Exactly.
That's exactly what it is.
Let's take a commercial break. We're going to come back and talk about the passing of a lot of legends here. I don't want to end on death, but we're going to commemorate them appropriately. John Brummett, more with him when we come back.
Right.
Arkansas Electric Cooperative Corporation provides electric energy across 2/3 of Arkansas. This is an exciting time in our energy history, with incredible progress being made in renewable energy and storage technologies. As our energy portfolio continues to diversify, we'll maintain an all-the-above strategy to provide reliable and affordable electricity. Ever since the first light bulbs were placed in our members' homes, the electric cooperatives have been the solutions provider for our members, and we want to continue that well into the future.
Each day, the promise of our nation begins again. Arkansas and America, moving forward. I help make that promise a reality. It's not for everyone, but people everywhere depend on us.
Oh, I love you too, sweetie.
Trucking delivers, or everything stops. And that's what drives me.
I did.
Welcome back to Talk Business and Politics Daily. I'm with John Brummett at the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. All right, the last 10 days have been miserable for our culture and our arts and the passing and our heritage, and some great legends have passed. We run through the laundry list here. Dick Gregory, Jerry Lewis, Frank Broyles, Sonny Burgess, Glen Campbell. To lose one or even two of them would be kind of devastating to some extent, but to lose all five of them in such a short time span, I'm not even sure we can do justice to, properly providing tribute to all of them. But of the ones I just mentioned there, I'm just going to let you randomly pick whichever one you want to riff on. So
Just one.
you can go two. How about that?
Well, I'm gonna cheat and go three. No, I'm kidding.
You can do three.
Well, once I start
We don't have a
talking,
time constraint.
well,
You go for it. Number one.
It occurred to me, pairing Frank Broyles and Glen Campbell, if you were, as I was, a poor kid in Arkansas growing up in the late 50s and early 60s, if those were your formative childhood years, you were, like I was 4 years old in 1957 when Central happened, then you're living in a place that is, you have a great opportunity to have an inferiority complex about your place. And I think I was not the only one in my tender youth in Arkansas who had such a thing. And we lost population in the 50s. We were shamed internationally from Central High. We were one of the poorest states. We were ridiculed in a lot of popular national culture for our backwardness. And I found myself hungry, desperate for something to put forward a good impression of the place where I lived. It was just, even as a kid, it was important to me. Those two guys, Frank Broyles and Glen Campbell, in the 60s, Frank Broyles produced a national championship football. Now I know it's football, but it's a big deal to a kid and to adults.
And he came here the year after Central High, too.
Produced a national championship. That national championship team, then the team next year won 22 straight games and was ranked number one most of the year. In 1969, a few years later, just in these formative years where I'm needing something to make me feel good about my state, the big shootout with Texas when they were number one and number two, the Arkansas football program became nationally famous, nationally regarded, and was in its way a source of great pride for me and for others in Arkansas, hungry to have their state put forth a good impression. Likewise, in the late 1960s, 68 or 69, the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour was a going thing on CBS on Sunday nights. They brought in as a summer replacement, which then became a permanent show, the Glen Campbell Good Time Hour. And Glen Campbell, this guy, he was a son of a sharecropper from Billstown, Arkansas. My folks were sharecroppers a few miles north in Howard County. He was a musical genius. He was not a particularly sophisticated person, but just on the sheer power of his innate talent and the opportunities that somehow he was able to take advantage of, he became At the time, I would say for 2 or 3 years there, from Gentle on My Mind, and by the time I get to Phoenix through Wichita Lineman, the song, he was probably the leading recording artist in the country. And he had a primetime Sunday night television show. And I remember getting home from church and just couldn't wait to watch it because I was proud of him. Now, he sometimes would embarrass us. While his tenor voice was beautiful for singing, some of his performance in skits and some of his hosting was a little bit wincing, caused me to wince. And his acting in True Grit was the worst acting I think I've ever seen. But I loved him anyway, and I loved the way he was from Arkansas, and he made us feel better. Those are the two I would put together. Sonny Burgess,
Yes.
rockabilly, in the roadhouse culture of East Arkansas, in and around Memphis, in an orbit around Memphis, bringing together blues, gospel, rhythm and blues, country, bring all that together in
Early
this,
rock and roll.
early, yeah, which was early, well, rockabilly, which, and it was Saturday night honky tonks and on the roadside in Newport, Arkansas, with these guys playing this good rhythmic dance music. It later, I mean, Sonny Burgess is up there with Carl Perkins and people like that, and they were the ones who paved a way, or were part of the Elvis revolution. And I got to go to his 80th birthday party.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Where was it?
It was, well, I say get to go, I bought a ticket to it. It was, he didn't call me up and say, John, I want you to come.
Well, I was about to say,
But,
you got some insight right there.
but not in this case. I just went, he and the Pacers, all of them, 80 and using walkers and with new hips and you know, the whole deal, could still play. And they played an hour-and-a-half show at the Ron Robinson Theater on their 80th birthday to a full, energetic, aging, and appreciative audience. It was a great night. Arkansas is rich in musical heritage, and Glen Campbell in one way, but Sonny Burgess maybe in a purer way on in and around Memphis represented it. And it's that the three of them leave in such a short span tells us that an era is over.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, those are some good
Too much?
stories, and we will end on that uplifting tribute there
All right,
about
then.
how powerful they were for the state, the nation, and our images
We
there.
should have monuments to all of them in our public squares.
Right.
All right?
John Brummett's working on his monument in the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. They're going to put you in their Hall of Fame. I don't know if you know that or not.
Well, they ought to.
Yes.
I say modestly. Okay.
That's all for today's program. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.